it is race week again, and this week we get to hear the Dutch national anthem twice! Yeah, a few. But in all seriousness, I am hyped to watch F1 racing again this weekend. Teams are ramping up to their final upgrades and have shifted their focus to their 2024 cars, so we discuss, will the final 10 races give us a hint for the 2024 season? Before we fully leave summer break, we're going to take a look back at all the driver and team principal moves that happened last year, because we're halfway through 2023, and we want to discuss were those choices the correct choices that all those teams made. We had a quiet, silly season this year, and an explosive one last year, so there's a lot to discuss. And lastly, Nicole pays up after our first predictions challenge came to an end before summer break. She does our predictions for the Dutch GP while exercising. Plus, we set out new exciting stakes for our predictions for the remaining 10 races of the F1 season. That wraps up the Formation Lap for episode 31 of Grid Walk, a weekly Formula One podcast that believes there are fascinating stories to discuss across the entire F1 grid. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Follow, turn on auto downloads, and leave us a review if you're listening on any audio platform, all things that greatly help support the show.
Cole and Briana are lined up on the grid. It's lights out, and away we go on this week's Grid Walk.
But it's time for a Pirelli tire graphic!
It is! Because I know that summer break is over, and everyone's back at work, but there's been no news. And no leaks. The only team we know that's bringing upgrades for sure at the point of recording is Haas. So there's really not a lot to discuss, but there's always a Pirelli tire graphic.
Yeah, it's been an incredibly quiet, silly season. It's been quiet on news. Everyone's behaving themselves relatively suddenly. I don't know what's happening, but thank goodness for Pirelli tire graphics.
Yeah. Basically, Alpine fired everyone the Friday before summer break, and every other team went, we don't need to mess with that. Like, you guys do your thing, we'll figure it out. Like, let's all take summer.
I thought we were going to have a podium of silly season moments, and we got nothing.
Nothing. The one thing I do trust in F1 is that when the floodgates open, it opens. So there's going to be one driver move, and then everything tumbles after that. But not every year can be like last year. I think we're looking for a lot of re-signings this year. Yeah.
A lot of sitting waiting.
But Dutch GP. So this is what I call my most frustrating Grand Prix of the year. I will throw out there that the organizers of the Dutch GP say they're actually going to punish people who use and bring flares. I don't know why my brain took a minute to process that. You saw the stalling in my brain. So we'll see if that happens. That will make me hate this track less. Just because they're unsafe, and last year they decided to throw them at the drivers. But this
I would be
track
shocked.
is cool.
I firmly believe that there's going to be a Verstappen crossing the finish line and suddenly a lot of orange smoke places, because then it'll be done. But we'll see.
But that I'm okay with. What I'm not okay with it is at the start of the race, during the race, or when you chuck flares at drivers on
Yes. Yeah, let's not throw flares at humans. Thank you. Right. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah. But this circuit is really cool, in my opinion, because it's the only one we get that has true banking. And that's always cool. This is a really high downforce track, which is why Pirelli is bringing their hardest tires. And I know it's been a while since we talked about tires. So to just put all of our brains back where we were, basically at Silverstone last year, they brought, not last year, sorry, last month. It feels like a year ago at this point, and we're starting a new season. But we're not. Max is ahead by a bajillion points, and I wish we could reset them like we reset our predictions. But they brought new tire makeups to Silverstone. These tire makeups are stronger. That's great and all, except that we haven't had any tire drag really all season, which means that racing has been, despite the fact that Red Bull's in the lead by a lot, the more the tires degrade, the more interesting races are, because you get more pit stops, more strategy decisions, etc., etc. All right, if you forgot, you're all caught up now. So Pirelli's bringing the hardest, least likely to degrade tires to this race, but that is because I think the only tracks that eat tires more all season is like Silverstone. And that's because Silverstone's such high load through the tires. So if you're looking for what teams are likely to do well here, I would look to the results of Silverstone. And basically any team that doesn't have issues with tire deg will probably go better at the track this year.
Are we avoiding team names just to not jinx anything?
Oh, no. I just was like introing and then
As soon as you were like, teams that did good at Silverstone, I was like, are we just trying to not say certain people's names?
Oh, no. Like McLaren and Mercedes should do well here. Ferrari, probably not. But, throw the wrench in the whole thing that the last time I checked the weather, it's supposed to rain all weekend. So
When is it not? It's not. Wait, it's just, F1 race, it's gonna rain.
Look, I live in Southern California. We had a wildfire that was put out by a hurricane and then an earthquake. Like, global warming is a thing, people. And on my lowest priority of frustrations, but is still a frustration, is the way that we've had the rainiest F1 season, I think, in 50 years.
Crazy.
But it's still frustration. I'm annoyed. But, global warming, like, bigger issues. But, like, on the micro scale of issues, like, I'm a little tired of rain on an F1 weekend.
What's your guesstimate of pit stop strategy? Is Pirelli anticipating, like, a 2-3 stop, maybe? Mostly likely a 2 stop, probably, right?
So I haven't read what Pirelli is predicting. Like always, I know the teams are going to try to make anything into a 1 stop. They possibly can because teams want to pit as little as possible. I'm curious what Dutch GP 2022. Normally I look this up. I'm rusty because it's been a month.
This is live. We'll do it live. It's live research. Live research is happening. Live
I'm curious
Googling.
what was last year a 1 stop or a 2 stop? I can't remember.
I believe it was mostly a 2 stop. I think there was like but there was a safety car, so like that also throws like a wrench in the thing.
Yeah, it was a 1 stop for most drivers last year.
Sick.
Yeah, Nicholas Latifi pit twice. Daniel Ricciardo pit twice. You remember all last season when McLaren would just completely shaft Daniel Ricciardo on the pit stop strategy for like a myriad of reasons?
I unfortunately am unable to forget.
Oh, wait. No. It looks like... Am I wrong? No. Okay. I am wrong. It definitely it was a 2-stopper last year, but Daniel Ricciardo, I think, did 3.
Sick. Sounds right, yeah.
I'm trying to...
Nope.
I know that there's someone listening right now who's just screaming through this entire thing. But yes, there were multiple pit stops last year. I would say that, like, whatever happened last year seems to be happening again this year as, like, a general rule of thumb, or there's less. Like, there's not going to be more pit stops than last year because the tires seem to be holding up better.
Oh, so you just meant in terms of tires and not just that every single thing in the... like, same way, shape, or form as last year is just happening again.
Wait, so, the podium last year was Max, George, Charles, and I think that's highly unlikely, and not what either of us said in our predictions that all these people will hear next. So you can now know that neither of us picked George for P2 or Charles for P3. Sergio Perez was P5. I think I have completely blacked out last year's Dutch GP from my memory. Because all I remember is that someone threw a flare on the track at Lewis Hamilton, and then the rest of the weekend was a wash.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Well, wow, what an exciting race to be ending the summer shutdown with. Yay!
I hate being this pessimistic. The reality is, I think this circuit is really, really cool. And the banking is cool, and the shots we're going to get of that. And I keep saying the word banking, but I probably should explain it, that basically the track rotates to the right or the left a little bit, whatever direction it does. So instead of the car going flat, the car goes like at an angle.
It's like, it makes me think of like snowboarders or like skateboarders.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
That's exactly what it is. If you're a fan of like American racing, it's like an oval. Like ovals are generally banked for NASCAR.
Or if you're a fan of the Cars cinematic universe.
Yes. That as well. Lightning McQueen. Right around the...
Exactly. 100%. That's literally what I thought of as soon as I was like, right, yeah. American racing. I'm totally kidding.
I went more practical. You went more fun. I like your route.
Sounds right. Sounds on brand.
But we don't normally get to see F1 cars do that, especially because the banking is no longer at Monza. And these cars are so crazy high downforce. So the fact that they don't have to lift when their car is practically sideways is really cool from a spectacle perspective. So remember that when Max is ahead by 60 seconds.
Spectacle perspective. Say that 10 times fast.
I couldn't even say it once.
I know, but I lost. This is my punishment. Oh my god, I'm gonna fall and die.
Please don't fall.
Like, literally, this may be more of a hazard because this is like, I think you might be able to combine our ages and this may be older. You know? So that's quirky.
All right. I will start the intro, I guess, when you start exercising.
Oh, okay. We're picking up momentum. It doesn't even, I don't even think it turns on. There's no plug. I don't know. Life cycle.
Hello, welcome to our first predictions post summer break. If you've never seen an episode of Gridwalk before, we make predictions for every single Grand Prix, and sprints included, and we tally up the points. And Nicole is currently paying off the bet for the first half of the season, which is that she had to do this segment on an exercise bike, because I won the predictions with 56 points, and Nicole had 36.
This just feels bizarre. This does
you
not...
don't normally exercise while we record the podcast, yeah.
No, I'm just very aware of, like, a lot of things happening right now. Yeah, losing sucks, but we're spicing up our picks this time around, so maybe I'll have some better luck this time. We'll see. Who knows? I hope so, because this is not fun. I feel silly. I feel super silly.
No, our picks weren't super far off, like, despite the final score. Like, most weeks we were really similar. I just destroyed with my Miami and Monaco picks.
Yeah, that definitely, you had some weekends that were, like, strangely lucky with the way that F1 works and functions. And I consistently, I never picked another driver besides Max to win. So, like, I always had those points guaranteed, but not enough. So
we're resetting. We're both back to 0 now. Maybe the luck will swing. We're changing up what we're picking, but I think we should also establish that we have a bet for this one too. So for the rest of the season, now the loser between the two of us will have to do an ice bath like the drivers do before the race.
That's definitely worse than this. I don't want to lose again, but I guess, like, losing, I've already lost. So, yeah, but an ice bath sucks. So
yeah, it really, I'm not excited. I think we both agreed to it because we're both cocky enough to think, like, I'm not gonna lose. That one, the other person will have to do that.
I believe in a comeback.
So this time around, we're both tired of having to say Max Verstappen is going to win every race. So until F1, the environment of F1 changes, we're not going to be picking at P1 anymore, and you can all infer that it's because we have Max every week. So instead, we're going to pick the rest of the podium. So we're going to pick P2 and P3 each week. We're going to still pick P10 every week because we think it's one of the more fun picks we do. But we're going to add on 2 other new ones, one being the last finisher. So we're not talking about P20. If you DNF, it doesn't count. It's the last person to finish the race. And then we're going to pick the team who scores the most points that is not Red Bull every week. which is essentially our way of picking who do we think is going to take a step forward for P2 throughout the rest of the season, because that's really what we're rooting for overall.
It's what the F1 battle that we can actually be rooting for at this point is that P2, whatever that can be. And, last to finish just felt like picking the opposite of picking Max every single week. So I think it'll be really funny to see how that evolves this second half of the season.
And the field, Red Bull not included, I think the bottom 4 or 5 teams are pretty close, and it depends. It's more circuit specific on what team is the worst. And then I think, even though we would definitely say the AlphaTauri is the worst car overall, but that doesn't mean they're always guaranteed to be in last. And then, I think the Aston Martin, Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren battle is decently close, and it's circuit specific. So we're trying to design our picks to make sure they're interesting and different every week. So you don't have to tune in to a prediction show where we just say, yeah, Max is going to win, whatever, every week.
We want to avoid doing that, and we did that for the first, half of our episodes, but no more. But we're still we're predicting it, we're just not saying it.
And I am making this intro decently long to extend the amount of time that Nicole needs to sit there.
No, I'm like, can we just pick? I'm looking at my picks on paper because I have to, be exercising while doing this. And I feel like I'm sweating, which feels dumb. There's just not, I don't know if there's no air conditioning. I don't know what. This is torture. I hate this. This is, the opposite of what an ice bath would be. So just know, if I lose, or if I win and you lose, I will remember this.
Yeah, I know, for sure. There's no way that I would have to do an ice bath and you wouldn't make me do it for 10 minutes. I know. I'm well aware with how much I've destroyed.
That sounds super painful. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see when we get there.
Yep.
I still have to get through this.
I will say that if you spent this entire time just listening to us on audio, I would recommend going and watching this over on YouTube, because this is a visual payoff with what we have here. But we hope we did a good job describing it. All right, now let's get into it. Nicole, who do you have for P2 for the Dutch GP?
So I feel like, I'm just going in with positivity. I've already lost, even though I said I'm trying to avoid...
This is now we're at 0-0. You shouldn't...
No, but, I feel like once you have, we're going in, it was fresh. It was our first predictions competition, and, I've already lost. So I don't have to fear the losing again, besides it being an ice bath. But I'm going in with a hopeful pick, so we may want hope alarm. But you know what? I don't care, because my P2 pick is Lewis Hamilton.
If I were to give you a hope alarm, I would also have to give myself a hope alarm, because I also put Lewis at P2.
Yay! Joint delusion! Delulu! Or maybe not. I really kind of don't feel like it.
Well, the Dutch circuit is a high downforce circuit, and I do think that this is going to be one of those races where McLaren takes a step up versus Spa, and disclaimer, we're doing these picks before we've heard any news about who's bringing upgrades and what those upgrades are, but I think the Mercedes car will do decently well at this track, and if I'm going to pick one of the cars to do decently well with 0 upgrade information, I'm going to pick Lewis. So, plus it's been a long summer break and I need some happiness.
Wow, great. Surprise, same brain space on this one. Who do you have for P3?
Sergio Perez.
Ooh, okay.
I think he's going to continue his streak of not doing awful, but doing worse than he should.
In my brain, I have him in a P4 place, even though we're not picking that anymore. I was going into this thinking that's who I would have there, because my P3, I think it's going to happen. It would be fun to watch it happen. Oscar Piastri, P3 finish.
I would love if that happened. That would be so fun.
Right, I would love to see it. He's getting closer. It keeps almost happening, or something almost there. I mean, we saw the 0.011 seconds gap from Max in whatever sprint race, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it'll happen. Would just be great news, fun headline to see. Great F1 story of him getting that podium celebration.
I agree. I hope you are right and I'm wrong. That is my goal. Okay, I think we should do a team that is not Red Bull that scores the most points at the Dutch GP. Who do you have?
Mercedes.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
That's why I was like, let's get that out of the way. We both put Lewis P2. We're both picking Mercedes.
Yeah, like,
cool.
George should finish in the points, and math.
P10.
I'm going to say I have a hopeful P10 again. But again, we're manifesting some fun, manifesting good things. I have Alex Albon in P10.
Oof. At this high downforce circuit?
I don't know. You never know. I don't know. I went with Alex Albon. I just wanted an Alex pick. And now you can share your P10.
I have Lance in P10.
Okay. Yeah. Hopefully
yeah,
a point finish for Lance would be nice.
Yeah, I think of the top teams, like I think McLaren jumps Aston and Ferrari here, and so it felt like the right decision, even though I hope he's higher than P10.
Right.
But oof, Alex Albon, Nicole.
I don't know. You know what? Sometimes you just feel like having a little bit of a wild pick, and that's literally what I'm doing.
I know.
Then we're doing last to finish.
Last to finish. So, in contrast to you thinking there's going to be a Williams in the points, I have Logan Sargent as the last to finish.
So I also have Logan Sargent as last to finish. Because if I'm going to be really silly somewhere, I'll be really realistic somewhere. And how hysterical would it be if somehow Alex Albon works the magic of a P10 and then Logan was last to finish? I did pick Logan last to finish and saw the opportunity to do the Alex bit, but didn't want to, like, ruin it right away. That's kind of what led me to my Alex P10, just for the fun of it.
Yeah, I was alternating between it being a Williams or a Haas as the last to finish, and then the decision split was because I think the Haas is more likely to DNF.
Right, and that's the tricky part of this, of the likelihood of not finishing and just finishing last. It's like really like so impossible to pick. It's such the opposite of picking Max. Because you're like, yep, we know that one. This one, we don't know. Will they cross the finish line or will it be a reliability problem? Who knows?
Yeah, I like that we have somehow developed a group of picks here that in a sport that sometimes feels so pre-decided, we're like, how random and wild can we select our picks to be so they are as unpre-decided as F1 could possibly be?
You need evidence. It's right here, baby.
Alex Albon P10.
With Logan P20 something.
Last.
I don't know.
Last.
Ugh, I could use an ice bath now. I feel warm.
Well, we're back to 0-0. Definitely let us know in the comments below who you think had the better predictions this week. And happy F1's return.
Happy F1 return, end of summer break. Holy moly.
All right, the tire is back, but we've switched up the topics this week. Because admittedly, we've entered the part of silly season rumors where we've talked about all of it. There just needs to be an announcement. So the tire is still here, but we've switched up the topics this week. Because we've hit the part of silly season where it's just we've entered insane rumor territory. There's no new news coming out. There might be a thing or two in the L Sector notes later to update you on, but that's it. So what we have on the Tire of Topics this week are a bunch of silly season events that actually did happen last year. And we think that midway through the season is a good time to do our first reflection on whether or not these silly season moves from 2022 were good moves that were made.
Let's spin. Or do we need to share what's on?
Yeah, I guess I should tell everyone what's on the wheel. And we're not going to get to all of these today, but hopefully we hit some good ones. So, Sergio Perez signed an extension, which I didn't think about much at the time, but I'm now thinking about a lot. Colton Herta almost became an F1 driver. Seb retired, which led to Alonso moving to Aston Martin. The Oscar Piastri saga Gasly moved to Alpine, which also includes the Daniel Ricciardo exit, I guess a little bit as well in there.
It's all connected.
Yeah. Binotto was fired, and Nico Hülkenberg replaced Mick Schumacher. Of course, this isn't everything that happened last year. It was a very eventful year. But just some highlights. Let's spin the tire.
Spin the tire, spin the tire, spin the tire.
And the end is very dramatic. Colton Herta. I think we spent about 3 weeks of last year in silly season wondering, will Colton Herta get a super license exception to be able to drive for AlphaTauri? And he obviously didn't, and AlphaTauri went with Nick DeVries instead. What are your thoughts and feelings 6 months later on how that all panned out?
Well, Nick DeVries is no longer driving. So, I mean, my opinion, as someone that loves Daniel Ricciardo, I don't necessarily wish that this played out in a different way right now. I'm feeling pretty good as a Daniel Ricciardo fan, but that's nothing against Colton Herta. But I remember last year being like, is that exception going to happen? And then once it all went down, it did also feel like that Nick DeVries was going to be like the golden child of like the following year after doing so many like drivings of different teams and stuff. None of that played out at all in the way that we thought. So it's just so interesting to think that like it just could have never been Nick in the first place. Right. And Colton Herta could have been in F1. Who knows what difference that could have been. That's right. A crazy thing.
Yeah, two things hold true. I guess this would be a year later-ish, give or take. The super license system in this case is still dumb because Colton Herta is fast enough and good enough at the race car things that he should be able to drive in F1 if someone wanted him to drive in F1. Whole thing's still dumb. Also, things that hold true is that, like, I like rooting for Colton Herta. Glad he's not with Red Bull. And, like, I think, and to your point about, like, Nick DeVries, I don't think it really mattered who ended up in that second AlphaTauri seat. I think it got to a point where Red Bull just didn't like any of their options. And I think there was a scenario, I think there are very few scenarios where we didn't end up with a Daniel Ricciardo in that seat. Because at this point, they were still, like, their initial plan was to still have Pierre in that seat, which also doesn't make sense as their development team. Like, this whole thing, like, upon reflection, the AlphaTauri seat coming into this year was going to be a mess. Was a mess back then. Wow, Colton dodged a bullet.
Yes. Yeah. You also wouldn't have been able to see Colton at the Long Beach GP, which would have been sad. Yeah. Happy that, for a lot of reasons, that Colton didn't end up in the AlphaTauri seat. So I think will be interesting to see if, like, we ever get Colton in F1 at all now. Who knows?
If
I don't
we
want to
don't
jump over to our other topics just yet.
No. I'm not going to talk. We won't talk about Colton because we're just going to talk about Alex Palou. But Colton is one of those, like, generational fast race car drivers, and he is so young. I think he's 21, 22 still. So if Colton Herta never ends up with a legitimate shot in F1, like a supported shot in F1, like, I will be very disappointed. Not that, like, not having that, like he could still have a fantastic career over in IndyCar, like, they're completely different series. I just would like to see him in an F1 car at some point, and I hope that it's a legitimate real shot when it happens.
Yeah, just to see what he can do. Confirmed he is a 2000s baby. He is a 23-year-old. Yeah.
In 2000s?
2000s. I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. Someone
really
Walker.
Yeah. I mean, Andretti has always said that if they have an F1 team, he's their driver. So I think that's going hand in hand. But let's spin the wheel again.
Please, let's spin the wheel again. We can't start talking about Andretti now.
Okay. Spin 2 of our 2022 reflection on silly season. Come on, wheel. I don't even know what I'm rooting for. It's all so spicy.
I know what I'm rooting for, and I'm not gonna get it, but this is a fun one.
Mattia Binotto was out as Ferrari's team principal. Fred Vasseur was in as Ferrari's new team principal. Wow, I don't even want to admit what my brain was going to say there. I'm tired. This was, by the time this actually happened, this felt inevitable. But going from fake competing for a world championship, because we all knew it was pretty fake, to then everyone pretending like it wasn't fake, to him getting, like, this whole thing. Ferrari last year was a thing, and he ended up being the fall man. So upon reflection, was this a good firing? Let me rephrase that. How did you feel at the time, and how do you feel upon reflection now, a year later?
When they first started talking about these rumors of Edna Mode getting fired, I remember both of us being like, no way. There is no way Ferrari's going to actually do it. And then by the time it actually happened, we were like, oh my God. I mean,
finally.
Finally. Took long enough. And how do I feel about it now? I don't know. I don't necessarily feel like anything has changed drastically, like, for Ferrari. I think Fred Vasseur's a really fun personality in the paddock and in interviews, but in terms of, like, where Ferrari's at, a lot of it feels the same.
I think none of my feelings about this have changed. My feeling at the time was, I understand why he was fired and why Ferrari felt like they needed a fall guy, but I never thought Binotto was, like, the problem. And I agree that my feeling now is Fred Vasseur is a great personality, and he might make changes at Ferrari, but I still don't believe that Binotto was the Ferrari problem. Like, I think Ferrari just has an institutional problem that whether or not Fred is able to change, like, I don't think, like, oop, new fall guy, like, we'll see who it is in 2 years. It is so hard to evaluate team principal changes because we are just seeing, like, I would say this last Ferrari upgrade and the one that we should be getting, they said around Austin, are going to be the first upgrades to the car that were under not Binotto. And then next year's car is really how we're going to evaluate Fred's technical leadership. And it's so hard. Like, even he's hired a big name from Mercedes that doesn't get to come to the team until 2025. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it was successful, but I know Ferrari still has issues.
Yeah, I love the sport in all of the ways that it makes almost basically no sense.
Right?
It will be really interesting if and when, like, Binotto is announced as replacing Otmar and Alpine. But then, literally, to your point, maybe all of the changes that we're seeing will just be what Otmar had in plans for 2024. And, like, when we'll be able to really see, like, what was Binotto and which was Otmar. And, like, same over at Ferrari of, like, what was Vasseur and what was Binotto. But even still, if, like, right now what we're looking at in terms of, like, upgrades for Ferrari was Binotto, then, like, really it hasn't been anything unbelievably impressive at all. So maybe it was a good move. I think there's still, like, so much in time that would have to determine if this was a good decision. And honestly, I don't know if we'll ever really have the answer because, to your point, Ferrari likes to find a fall guy, and I think they pointed at Binotto for a lot of problems that, like, weren't solely him.
I will say that I'll say that everything Fred says to the public, like, I like that his PR strategy is different and better. Like, I like that even if he's not saying anything, he's not lying. Like, I think the PR strategy, which comes, like, I think there's a overall messaging that the team principal will implement. Like, hey, here's our general strategy, but it is pitched by a complete communications team. So I just want to be clear that this is not just on the team principal. But a lot under Edna Mode's, like, that whole year was just him lying through his teeth. And that becomes grating and frustrating. And, like, do you really think us as the public are stupid? Whereas at least now Vasseur is very like, I'm not going to tell you that. And we're like, well, you didn't lie to me. Like, thank you. Like, we're going to try to win this weekend. Like, if anyone was going around this season saying we're actually going to win, like, we would just be laughing at them. And that's what we were laughing at Ferrari for last year. So that's improved. And I think the real thing we could judge him on is how he is going to handle the upcoming contract negotiation with Charles. Because I understand that Leclerc has said, like, I'm Ferrari. But I'm sure he has people in his camp that are realists. Like, can they keep him happy is going to be a big part, I think, of the first thing that we're going to be able to judge him on.
And time will tell. And at the end of this spin is a great time to tell any new listeners of Gridwalk that we like to call Mattia Binotto Edna Mode.
Yes.
And I think we have time for another spin.
I agree. Let's do it. Third spin, but Nicole teased that there's one she wants. So Nicole, as this spins, what's the one you're hoping for?
I really want to talk about Seb.
Oh, the wheel didn't listen to you.
It never does. Actually, that's not true. There was one we did listen to every single time.
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes the wheel really listens to you. That's why I said you should shout it as it was spinning. But what it landed on was Pierre Gasly's move to Alpine. So, recap, if you're newer to F1 here, Pierre Gasly did get the call up after his rookie season to the big Red Bull seat. Max destroyed him. It was a little bit of a disaster. He, mid-season, got swapped with Alex Albon. I'm not going to get into the details of why it was a disaster, but it's well documented. You can look it up. Since then, he's been at AlphaTauri. He's won a race at AlphaTauri. And I think we could all see his career sputtering out, but it was very clear that he was never going to get the promotion back to the Red Bull team. So the opportunity arose when Alpine messed everything up last year, and they bought him out of his AlphaTauri contract, and he is now an Alpine driver. So I think there's two angles to look at this, from the team perspective and from Gasly's perspective. So I'm going to start with the Alpine perspective. Alpine lost Alonso and Oscar Piastri, and they gained a Pierre Gasly. So in your opinion, Nicole, do you think, what were your thoughts at the time about Alpine basically mitigating their losses here? And what are your thoughts now about how this has worked out?
So I did definitely feel like last year, we didn't hit the Oscar Piastri of it all, but God, if you don't know what happened with Oscar Piastri, am I so jealous of everything that you get to go Google after listening to this.
Yeah.
But it definitely seemed like Alpine was maybe kind of in like a little bit of a panic of like, oh my God, who are we going to put here? We need someone to put here. And I'm sure like Pierre is very like willing to jump and move. I don't know. It definitely felt like a hasty rush hire of wanting to get someone in the seat with experience. I just remember my initial thoughts being like, oh no, ST Bestie has to be a teammate with his frenemy was like the first thing that I ever thought. And not necessarily like, wow, Alpine made a great move here in picking right. So that was never necessarily my first thought of it all. How did you foresee the Alpine move of things?
Well, yeah, Alpine was a joke last season. So much so that it makes all the jokingness from this season look more competent than the joke last season. I really felt like when they were actually able to buy Gasly out of his Red Bull contract, I felt like that was the best possible outcome at that point. And I really felt like they took a horrible losing situation and made some really sour lemonade, but at least it was lemonade. Kind of like you could at least, like they were able to go out there and say, look, we got this French driver and look how marketable he is and like everything's great and now both of our drivers are race winners, and they said all these great things and they were at least able to attempt to try to spin it. And I think if they put anyone who wasn't Pierre Gasly at that point in that seat, that was an option on the table, I don't think they would have been able to spin it, which is why I think it was on the team side worth every single penny that they paid to Red Bull to get this to happen.
Then versus now?
Now, I think it's turned out kind of exactly how I thought it would. I'm not high on Gasly's driving capabilities. Like, I don't think he's slow. Like, it's not about that. But I don't think he's a world champion caliber driver. I think he likes to crash into his teammate. I think he's a little hot-headed. I think when you're in an upper midfield team, which I will never foresee until Alpine proves otherwise that they're anything other than that, there's such an element of you just need to do your job with your, like, nose down and, like, just get the points. And this season has been very up and down for him, and I haven't seen that out of him. But also the engines like to explode because it's the Renault engine. So who knows? Like, I think with everything else going on at Alpine, I stand by how I felt at the time, which is this was them making the best they possibly could after already messing everything up. What about you? How have you felt about Gasly at Alpine this year?
So the one thing that's been like ringing true is like in like recent quotes from Pierre. He has labeled this his unluckiest season in F1. He was removed from the Red Bull seat mid-season. Mm-hmm. So, like, that's just where, like, reading that quote, I'm immediately like, I would disagree with you if you want to, like, just not be pointing the blame at yourself for mistakes that you had made and be calling, like, other things unlucky. Those situations, probably not this season, would have been your unluckiest. But, yeah, I feel like it was a good marketing move for Alpine at the time. I didn't necessarily think there would be much from it. I would love to see SD Bestie outperform Pierre more, but that's also just because I'm an SD Bestie fan. I would like to see him outperform his teammate. Yeah, bad for Yuki. Must be lonely without Pierre.
Yeah, but now he has Daniel Ricciardo.
Right, and they seem like they have fun, but it's not
they do.
Pierre and Yuki, you know?
Right.
That's my takeaway. Poor Yuki out of all of it.
I just, we came into this season expecting Esteban and Pierre to, like, be crashing into each other more than Pierre has already crashed into Esteban, or, like, creating a ruckus, and everyone was like, it's going to be the next Nico and Hamilton thing, and blah, blah, blah. And, like, the reality is the rest of Alpine's on fire, and Esteban and Pierre are just trying to navigate through the chaos. So I wonder if, like, I know that he really billed this for himself as, like, I'm finally stepping up to, like, a works team again, and just unfortunately that works team is Alpine. So, I wonder how he's feeling. Like, I wonder if he misses AlphaTauri.
He misses Yuki. I don't think he misses AlphaTauri. F1 teams are returning to work. Oh, great. That's recorded forever. Oop, someone got a text.
Editing, Briana.
Yellow sector.
Oh my god, Wawa is sponsoring NASCAR's feeder series.
They're so
car.
pretty.
They're so pretty.
Also, female driver.
I know.
Shout out Wawa. Not that we needed more reasons to love Wawa. I am also currently without Wawa, though I am closer than you are. But, yeah.
Oh my god, yeah, you're right.
I can't. There's none on Long Island.
Yeah. Is there one in the city? I don't think so. No.
Because why would there be a gas station?
Okay, but most Wawas are not gas stations in your area?
But, like, they were all... I mean, in my area, it's New Jersey. I don't go there.
I'm just saying, New Jersey, like, the Wawas in the tri-state area mostly are not gas stations.
Right. Yeah. I went to the one in Princeton that was also in the train. I don't know. It was very fancy. We are not talking about anything necessary.
Yellow sector notes. I wonder if I'll keep any of that tomorrow. Hello, future Briana. Welcome back to Yellow Sector Notes. Not the fastest walk around F1, but we will complete a full lap around the paddock, hitting every F1 garage because we're back from summer break, so I do have at least something to say about every F1 team. Adrian Newey, currently the Red Bull technical director and the former McLaren technical director. If you look back in history, if McLaren was fast, it was probably Newey. If Red Bull was fast, it was probably Newey. He wore a McLaren hat and caused the entire internet to just melt down. Lance Stroll drove the prototype Aston Martin endurance racing car, the Valkyrie, at a track in Portugal this week. Alpine has no real news. I think that's just because they're trying to figure out who's in charge of the team after firing everyone right before summer shutdown. VB is going to be launching a wine brand soon. Rumors are swirling around about the Haas driver seats for next season. Either both drivers are secure, both drivers are not secure, one is leaving, another one's needing. I've seen every headline. Similarly, there's rumors going around that Charles Leclerc's contract extension is going to be announced at the Italian GP. If there is one. Again, rumors. I don't know. There continues to be discussions of AlphaTauri moving their base from Italy next to Red Bull in the UK next season, which is opening up a lot of questions about the legality of that. Williams team principal James Vowles says 5-year plans are pointless, and the max you should plan for is 3, which seems like a direct stab at Alpine, but he didn't directly say that. I'm just reading into that. Zach Brown told ESPN this week that their new wind tunnel is fully online. And last but not least, Lewis Hamilton continues to be the GOAT. The FIA is now conducting an internal review of all their verbiage across all the regulations and all their series to make it gender neutral after Hamilton pointed out that the regulations still refer to drivers using only the he pronoun. That is the grid walk for August 24th, 2023 completed. How was my sector time today, Nicole?
Faster than F1 teams are returning to work after summer break.
Give us some news.
It's so quiet right now. Just can't.
Scary quiet.
Scary quiet. Something's brewing.
Uh-huh. Where are those cost cap news?
Oh boy. They want us to forget, and we haven't. Thank you, as always, to VoiceOver Man and our 4-legged executive producers, and a big no thanks to the inventor of bike seats. Why are they so uncomfortable? On actual bikes, on exercise bikes? I demand answers. We don't need to live like this in 2023. If you are an audio listener, don't forget to follow, turn on auto downloads, rate and review the pod. It'll take you 2 seconds. If you're watching on YouTube, what's up, cool cats? Subscribe, like the video, leave us a comment letting us know which one of us is taking an ice bath in November. Briana, put it out in the universe. It's gonna be Briana. All of these things really, really help other people find our podcast. Share it with your friends. We really appreciate you spreading the word about Gridwalk. Join us for daily grid walks on every single social media platform that you can find. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Threads. We are at Gridwalk Show everywhere you can find us. We will be back to walk the Formula One grid every single Thursday, and we seriously hope that you join us. Today felt like a grid-baked turn and not